Lady had said it was for our time, and it was for him.
Besides speaking of the spiritual crisis within the Catholic Church, does the third secret speak of a divine chastisement of the world at large? None other than the former Cardinal Ratzinger, now Pope Benedict XVI, has confirmed that it does.
In the 1984 interview in which Cardinal Ratzinger spoke of the third secret, he said, "The things contained in this third secret correspond to what has been announced in Scripture and what has been said again and again in many other Marian apparitions."
Cardinal Ratzinger's revelation in the 1984 Jesus Magazine interview that what is contained in the third secret corresponds to what has been said again and again in other Marian apparitions is very significant, because in the other Marian apparitions he refers to, there is a reference not only to a spiritual crisis in the Church, but to a divine punishment of the entire world. And one of these apparitions, approved as authentic by Church authorities, is the apparition of Our Lady at Akita, Japan in 1973. In this apparition, Our Lady speaks of a twin chastisement, a chastisement within the Church consisting of a crisis in faith and morals and discipline, and a divine punishment of the whole world. And at Akita, she gave some terrifying details about the nature of that divine punishment of the world. And by choosing to appear at Akita on October 13, 1973, the very anniversary of the miracle of the sun, Our Lady was sending a message, unmistakably connecting the Akita apparitions to the Fatima apparitions.
In 1973, at Akita in Japan, the Virgin Mary spoke to Sister Agnes Esagawa, a deaf nun. While praying in the chapel, Sister Agnes witnessed a great light surrounding a wooden statue of Our Lady. Sister Agnes then heard a voice coming from the statue, which delivered 3 messages to her. The first in July, the second in August, and the last and most important message on October 13, 1973. Our Blessed Mother warned, the work of the devil will infiltrate even the Church in such a way that one will see cardinals opposing cardinals, bishops against other bishops. The priests who venerate me will be scorned and opposed by their confreres. Churches and altars sacked, the Church will be full of those who accept compromise, and the demon will press many priests and consecrated souls to leave the service of the Lord. In the same message, the Virgin further warned that not only the Catholic Church, but the whole world will suffer the consequences of this loss of faith. She further said, if men do not repent and better themselves, the Father will inflict a terrible punishment on all humanity. It will be a punishment greater than the deluge, such as no one has ever seen before. Fire will fall from the sky and will wipe out a great part of humanity, the good as well as the bad, sparing neither priests nor faithful. The survivors will find themselves so desolate that they will envy the dead. After a thorough investigation by Bishop Ito, the bishop of the diocese in which Akita is located, the message of Akita was approved as being worthy of belief. Howard D., the Philippine ambassador to the Vatican, said in a 1998 interview with Inside the Vatican magazine that Bishop Ito was certain Akita was an extension of Fatima, and Cardinal Ratzinger personally confirmed to me that these 2 messages of Fatima and Akita are essentially the same. Over 1 million people from all over the world came to Fatima on May 13, 2000 for the beatification ceremony of Jacinta and Francisco Marto, the 2 Fatima visionaries. During his homily, Pope John Paul II referred to the Great Red Dragon in chapter 12 of the Apocalypse. He said the message of Fatima is a call to conversion, alerting humanity to have nothing to do with the dragon whose tail swept down 1/3 of the stars of heaven and dragged them to earth. Then came the surprise announcement. Cardinal Sodano, the Vatican Secretary of State, announced to the pilgrims that in the near future the third secret would be officially revealed. He then spoke of the secret containing the vision of a bishop clothed in white, who shortly after making his way amid the corpses of victims, falls to the ground, apparently dead, under a burst of gunfire. The cardinal went on to claim that this was a prediction of the 1981 assassination attempt against Pope John Paul II. Many in the audience applauded, but some were perplexed.
On May 13th, 2000, Pope John Paul II went to Fatima, and there he gave a very short homily, but he referred to chapter 12, verses 1, 3, and 4 of the Apocalypse. And in fact, he told us that the message of Fatima is for our time and telling us to be on our guard against the tail of the dragon, which is dragging down a third of the stars of heaven. Clearly, this language is not found in the published parts of the secret that I know of. It must be in the secret. However, Cardinal Sudano, shortly after the Pope finished his talk, gets up and announces that the third secret will be released in the near future, but he suggests that it refers to an event in the past. Now here we have Pope John Paul II telling us it's about our time, it's a warning for us today, and we have Cardinal Sudano telling us, well, it's in the past, it's about the assassination attempt. Cardinal Sudano, in the year 2000, was the Secretary of State. Now his job is dealing with states, diplomacy, and things like that. The matter of Fatima is a matter that is really the competence of the Office of the Doctrine of the Faith, and that was Cardinal Ratzinger's position. Now, I don't understand why Cardinal Sudano was the one making this announcement when Cardinal Ratzinger, as far as I know, was present at the same time. However, it was Cardinal Sudano that made this announcement. Why was he making this announcement? And what was he preparing us for?
On June 26, 2000, the Vatican released what it claimed was the entire text of the third secret of Fatima, which consisted of 62 lines of text written by Sister Lucy on what appeared to be 4 sheets of paper. Those 4 pages, which contain no words of the Blessed Virgin Mary, present an ambiguous vision. An angel is holding a sword that gave out flames that looked as though they would set the world on fire. The flames are repelled by the Blessed Virgin. Then a bishop, clothed in white, apparently the Pope, is seen hobbling through a half-ruined city filled with corpses. The afflicted Pope makes his way to the top of a hill outside the ruined city, and kneeling before the cross, he is killed by a group of soldiers who fired bullets and arrows at him, and in the same way, there died, one after another, the other bishops, priests, men and women religious, and various lay people of different ranks and positions. 2 angels gather up the blood of these martyrs and sprinkle it on the souls making their way to God. The Vatican commentary on the purported secret suggested that this vision pertains to the failed assassination attempt on John Paul II on May 13, 1981, in which the Pope was not killed. Given the lack of any explanation of the vision by the Blessed Virgin herself, Catholics were widely skeptical about the completeness of the Vatican's disclosure. How could the Virgin Mary have remained silent on the meaning of the third secret of Fatima?
According to the Vatican's interpretation of the third secret of Fatima, which is essentially Cardinal Sodano's interpretation, this ambiguous vision of the bishop in white being killed at the top of a hill before a large wooden cross is basically all there is to the third secret of Fatima, and it relates essentially to the assassination attempt, the failed assassination attempt in 1981. The only problem with this attempt at an interpretation is that it fails to mention any of the things that Fatima scholars, those who read the third secret, anyone who had any knowledge of this matter, knew were involved in the third secret. The loss of faith in the church, the liturgical changes, all of the things talked about in the prophecy of Pius XII about the suicide of altering the faith in the church's liturgy, theology, and soul, the apostasy in the church that begins at the top. There isn't a single reference to any of this in the Vatican's interpretation of the third secret. And why is that? Because what they published in June of 2000 doesn't contain a single word of the Blessed Virgin Mary to explain the vision of the bishop in white. She is utterly silent on the contents of the third secret, and that doesn't add up.
You know, Sister Lucy said that the secret should be opened in 1960 because it would become clearer then. Then we were told in 2000 that the third secret was about an assassination attempt against John Paul II in 1981. Why would an assassination attempt in 1981 become clearer in 1960?
The Vatican put out its interpretation of the third secret of Fatima in the year 2000. If it had been a plebe paper that I had received from one of my plebes in the freshman English course at the Naval Academy, I would have flunked it, because the interpretation does not in any way correspond with the facts.
I gave a talk one time on the third secret, and I read word for word what was released in the vision. And then I said to the audience, and the Vatican's interpretation of this is that this is a prediction of an assassination attempt against Pope John Paul II, and I have the recording. The audience laughed. The audience laughed at it, because at face value, it's just nonsense.
Does the Vatican's interpretation of this vision make any sense? Well, Sister Lucy explains in her own words how she understood this vision, what she saw. She depicted what she saw. This bishop in white, who is presumably the Pope, is shot and killed by a band of soldiers. The Vatican's interpretation is that somehow this refers to the assassination attempt on the life of John Paul II, of course. There are problems there. John Paul II was not shot by a band of soldiers. He was shot and wounded by one lone gunman. I think that alone is enough to dismiss the Vatican's interpretation as being nonsensical, because it simply does not add up. It makes no sense.
It doesn't make any sense that there would be so much fuss and weeping and gnashing of teeth on the part of people who saw the third secret before that, if it was about an assassination attempt which wouldn't succeed anyway.
It's so silly, even the New York Times looked at it and went, huh?
The Washington Post said very clearly, look, Cardinal Sodano said that the Pope falls apparently dead, but the vision of the secret leaves no doubt of what happens to the Pope. It says he's killed. So, Your Eminence, you weren't being honest with us. You gave us a falsified picture in order to force fit your interpretation upon it.
There are very specific images in what they claim is the third secret. Their interpretation does not match it at all.
There's other things the Washington Post pointed out that doesn't jibe. First of all, that the Pope in the vision is killed by a group of soldiers. But on May 13, 1981, there was not a group of soldiers, there was a single gunman. And the Post said, in the vision, cardinals, bishops, priests, lay people are also killed. But on May 13, 1981, no one else was shot at except Pope John Paul II.
A man in white climbing a hill who is shot with bullets and arrows and falls dead is not someone who is shot with a gunshot and recovers. It does not connect. It's not solid or even intelligent interpretation.
And the idea that this Bishop of White walking through a ruined city, through the bodies of his priests and prelates up to a hill where he's going to be assassinated, had nothing whatsoever in common with Aliaga, taking a couple shots at John Paul II in St. Peter's Square. There was nothing, there was no correspondence between the events.
For example, what is the half-deserted city, the desolated city? What does that mean? Does that mean an atomic war? Does that mean, is that an image of the church? That's not made clear at all or spoken of.
There's just overwhelming circumstantial evidence to indicate that we're dealing with a two-part secret, as Father Schweigel said, involving two distinct texts. It's so obvious that even Italian television commentaries are talking about the theory of le due buste, or the two envelopes, to use the Italian phrase.
It is impossible not to notice the number of discrepancies between what was known about the secret prior to 2000 and what was revealed on June 26th of that year.
We know that the Vatican said in 1960 that it was not going to reveal the third secret of Fatima to the world as expected. And in making that anonymous announcement through a press agency, it referred specifically to, and I think I'm quoting verbatim, the words of the Virgin which she confided to the three seers. So there was a specific reference in 1960 to the words of the Virgin in the Third Secret of Fatima. And yet the text published by the Vatican in June of 2000 involves a vision of the Pope in white being shot down and so forth, in which we find no words whatsoever uttered by Our Lady of Fatima. None. So already we have a major discrepancy. There must be a text, the one referred to by the Vatican back in 1960, that contains words of Our Lady confided to the seers.